Welcome to Connect 2021-2024, connecting universities and industry through smart entrepreneurial cooperation and competitive intelligence of students in Moldova, Georgia, and Armenia. You are about to watch the training module on the raise of funding and governance. This is part 1. Funding a new ventures is always a challenge, especially for founders without any prior experience on raising money and financing operations. We strongly recommend that founders should seek for professional advice in this very delicate issue that combines different aspects like financing, business, as well as governance. The funding steps are not the same for all types of ventures and at all stages of the life cycle. Viable, scalable, or large company startups are more likely to receive money from outside investors along with other financing types that can help them proceed their business plan. Grants, subsidies, bank loans are more appropriate for non-investable types of startups that are not the usual suspects for an investment. During its first steps after exiting the idea or PowerPoint phase, the startup will need capital to put together its solution, its product. Those very early needs can be supplied by founders' own money, family, or friends. A step forward, those needs will increase if there is no other way like a grant or a monetary reward to finance operation, then the startups will look for an investment. Angel investors can cover the need for capital and can become the first entity that can recognize the opportunity to engage in a new promising venture. Angel investors can fill the monetary gap with their risk capital and also become useful advisors for the startup to leverage other types of help besides of money. Investing accelerators can also fund the startup steps at this point. Early-stage VC funds can engage next in the investing cycle. Following business angels, VC funds can provide bigger investment tickets to support the coming steps of business development. At this point, it's good to remind that when in an idea stage or having a PowerPoint startup status, it is almost impossible to get funded because ideas simply don't get funded. So early stage investors will assess a few factors to decide if they will go ahead with placing their bet with a startup or not. They will start with the strength of the team, its complementarity, and the team will be more important in the assessment than the business plan. The size of the market that needs to be quite big. They will be interested in a big fat market there. The competitive advantage and the business model will also attract their attention, so above all, it needs to be competitive. Competition. Never say there is no competition, because this is a red flag for most of the investors. The prototype status, and the more ready, the better the product and the solution is, will make things easier. The time to market and in specific how far from commercialization the startup is will also play an important role. The funding needs are derived from the business plan and especially from the cash flow will tell how much money the startup needs. And of course, the investors will look for all kinds of friction points like barriers to entry, moving parts in the plan, and other things that might slow down the business. The startup phase and its raise conditions need to be very carefully examined. Startup founders should avoid knocking on investors' doors randomly. Instead, they should examine their status and the funding entities that have an investment thesis suitable for the time of their raise. The earlier the phase of the startup, the less options are available and less will be the chances to respond positively to an investment ask. A startup, after examining the available and compatible options, can proceed with planning the contact with a number of investment sources to present its business case and opportunity. So, how much money a startup can claim from an entity? How much equity should a startup offer in exchange for a capital investment? Who decides on that? Well, the answer to the above is not linear and depends on both the status of the one asking and the one giving. On the startup side, the asking part of the transaction, The so-called investment readiness and the startup phase are the main determinants of the value it has to offer. On the investor side, the type of the entity, business angel, angel group, startup accelerator, venture capital fund, etc., and of course its investment thesis can reveal quite a few information on the possible size of the investment ticket. A range of a mix of money for equity is supplied by funding entities, while the need for some type of traction that is required to get approved for funding increases as we advance towards institutional investors. Other key differentiators can be residency that is offered by incubators that in the rest of their terms resemble a lot the startup accelerators as well in the price of money offered. But wait, does money have a price? Well, yes. And the earlier the stage of the startup and that of a startup facilitator, the more expensively money are offered. In other words, be prepared to give more share of your company for every euro. The raise of funding is a synthesis of actions performed by startup founders to gather all the monetary resources necessary to cover the costs to move ahead with the goals of their business plan. The process is not called raise of funding campaign for no reason. It is a campaign. The whole process may last many months and will require a lot of time, plans, and actions to attract the investors' interest and finally, the money. The investment ask is basically the total amount of money that the startup suggests that is necessary to take it to the next level. The investment ask is related to the funding need to facilitate the plan's milestones with the desired liquidity. The accomplishment of a set of milestones as described by the plan will lead the startup to some kind of major accomplishment, which has to do with the completion of the prototype, penetration of a market, or something else. That major goal accomplishment will also increase the value of the startup. Beginning its campaign, the startup will have to identify the right investors, those who their thesis is compatible with the startup. A lot of screening will follow, with many meetings, exchange of documents in a typically lengthy process. After this process is passed successfully, then both the startup and the investing entity will have to agree on the basic terms. This agreement comes with a non-binding term sheet. A due diligence process examining the business plan, the team, and everything related to the investment will follow. If the due diligence process is successful, then both the startup and the investing entity will decide on the raise and of course based on the term sheet basic terms. Finalizing the legal documents and closing the deal will be the next steps that will follow the investment process. Now this deal between the investment entity and the startup is basically a transaction for someone who gives and someone who takes. And this transaction has a price tag that is determined based on the value of the deal and the value, of course, of the company that offers equity. But who decides on the equity? Well, according to Sitcam, the biggest determinant of a startup's value are the market forces. So the environment under which or in which the startup plays, the supply of money, and the willingness of investors to pay a premium to get a deal or not will be a greatest determinant on the valuation of the startup. To be a little more practical in this, the elements of evaluation are basically calculations that are usually combinations of market intelligence, non-comparable market values, in other words, how much other startups have been valued in different investments, and of course, business plan metrics. One of the most known methods of valuations is the Scorecard Method. Under this valuation method, the startup value is compared to similar deals done in that area using and applying some adjusting factors. In this example, an comparable deal of $1 million is used to adjust the value of the negotiated startup. Under the Scorecard Method, a number of value drivers like the strength of the management team, the size of the opportunity, the product and technology, the competitive environment, the marketing, sales, channels and partnerships, the need for additional investments or other factors are weighted and factored as to provide an adjusted pre-money valuation compared to the other deal. Similar to the Scorecard Method is the Berkus Method. The Berkus Method uses both qualitative and quantitative factors to calculate the valuation, and that based on 5 elements that are assigned a monetary value to each. In this case, the sound idea, the prototype, the quality of management team, and the strategic relationships and the product rollout or sales plan is assigned a value from 0 to 500,000. The sum of those assigned values determines the pre-money valuation under the Berkus Method. The risk factor method, instead of assigning percentage weights and multiples, assigns the ratings to each risk factor and adjusts the average of pre-money valuation for each one of the ratings. So values and value drivers are assigned some kind of a factor that has both negative or positive value, and at the end results to an adjusted pre-money valuation for the negotiated startup. The VC method is a 6-step quantitative method used by a lot of VCs. It bases in projections in a number of parameters like the forecast of the startup financials, the estimated need for an investment, the timing for an exit, the calculation of multiples at exit, the discounted present value at the desired rate of return, and the determination of valuation and the desired ownership stake. Under that formula, the VC method can provide a different approach for the pre-money valuation for the examined startup. In order to estimate how much of their company the founders will offer to the investment entity in exchange for the investment, we have to understand that the equity acquired is calculated on the basis of money ratio to the value of the company, and that after the investment money is in. To do that, we need the pre-money valuation, which is the value of the startup as negotiated. Next, we need the investment, which is the amount to be invested. And last, we need the post-money valuation, which is the pre-money valuation plus the investment. When we have those amounts figured, we can calculate the equity acquired, which is the investment, over the post-money valuation. To demonstrate that in a more clear way, we have an example of a startup valued at 800,000 euros. That startup negotiates an investment of 50,000 euros, and that will result to a post-money valuation of 850. That results by adding that 800,000 pre-money valuation plus 50,000. The equity acquired by the investors is 50,000 over 850, which equals to 5.9% of the company. And that is the amount the founders will have to give to the investment entity in exchange for the investment. Investors will also look carefully to the cap table, the capitalization table of a startup. In the cap table, the structure of company shares is depicted, and the cap table will change every time there is an investment or every time the capital of the company is raised. It is very important to have a very close look to the cap table because it shows control and of course distribution of capital. To get your hands on the investment, you need to present. You need to pitch. Pitching is a fast and accurate synthesis of main elements that are all figured out and explored in your valuation and business plan. So with pitching, we usually present to early stage investors or other stakeholders what we want to do, what we want to achieve, our plan, the business opportunity, the market, the competition, and of course, which particular team is going to make all those things happen. The main objective of a pitch is to get some type of support. There are different kinds of pitching, and they are based on the audience, the ones who will receive the communication message that the pitch delivers. Investors that you pitch to raise funding, customers that you pitch for feedback, sales when you want to introduce your product, service, and ultimately sell, employees when you want to recruit and motivate employees, partners when you want to recruit and motivate partners, and of course competitors when you pitch to explore synergies. Pitching to investors is a very demanding process. There are many different ways to present our company to investors with one sentence pitch where we present our value propositions in 2 to 5 seconds, a 60-second pitch, or as it's called an elevator pitch, a competition pitch, the most common used in events or pitching to some kind of committees ranging from 3 to 8 minutes in duration, and of course the investment pitch that might take a little longer. During pitching, the pitch deck presents the whole plan. The pitch deck is a synopsis of the basic structure of what we have in our mind, what we have planned, and what we promise. In a pitch deck, different elements like the company overview, the mission of the company, the team, the problem, the solution, the opportunity, the product analysis, the customer, the technology we use, the competition, the traction we have obtained, the business model and the go-to-market plan, our financials and our investment ask can be integral elements.